A decade from now, what do you think you'll regret overdoing? Interviews. If you could bring someone from history into the present day, who would you choose? Chris. And how do you handle pressure? Not very gracefully. The phrase Christian speak began trending. Before we proceed, please be advised, the following content contains sensitive material. It is intended for informational and dramatic purposes only. What you are about to hear is a direct transcription from the 8th day of testimony in the federal case against Sean Diddy Combs. This marks the first time that Jennifer Lawrence has been publicly identified as a protected federal witness. Her anonymity was preserved until now, not merely because of her fame, but due to what she experienced, what she narrowly avoided becoming part of, and what she courageously refused to ignore, even when silence would have been easier. The testimony opens with a letter, not a legal document, not a non-disclosure agreement, but a personal note. Handwritten, torn at one corner, dated 2012. It begins. To whoever's behind the curtain, this is your final notice. I won't be bought. I won't disappear. And I refuse to be the next Cassie. She was only 22 when she wrote those words. At the time, Cassie's lawsuit hadn't yet been filed. Judge, Miss Lawrence, you may begin, in your own words. I received an invitation to what was described as an exclusive arts benefit in Sierra Pines. They said it was a networking event for emerging talent, actors, innovators, storytellers. I was flattered. I was told it was a privilege to be selected. But I wasn't chosen. I was set up. She described arriving in an unmarked black SUV. Her phone was confiscated at the entrance gate. She was asked to sign a vague waiver. I assumed it was a standard release form, for press photos or promotional footage. But there were no cameras. Just dim red lights, silent corridors, men in expensive suits, and women wearing masks. The courtroom fell into eerie silence. The prosecutor asked for clarification. Were any of the women familiar to you? Jennifer gave a subtle nod. One of them was a well-known actress. I won't reveal her name. But she was visibly shaken. She went on, they told me it was a kind of performance, that participation was optional. But once the doors locked behind you, it became clear, no one could leave. You smiled, you followed the script, and you prayed not to be led into the wrong room. She recalled seeing a door marked not by a name, but a number. A girl exited, visibly distressed. Another never returned. I kept asking myself, is this how the whispered stories start? The prosecution presented Exhibit 17A, a confidential medical report from Jennifer's personal team confirming she returned from that night in a dissociative state, exhibiting signs of acute trauma. Her sudden absence from the spotlight in 2012 was publicly chalked up to fatigue following her breakout role in the Hunger Games. I didn't sleep for 3 days. That hallway, that smell, that silence, they lingered. They still do. Then came the moment that halted the courtroom entirely. Jennifer was asked if she had witnessed anything criminal. Not by statute. But morally, yes. One of the girls there, she looked like she could have been in high school. I asked someone about her. He said, she's here for conditioning, like she wasn't even real. The prosecution permitted her to read a passage from the letter she wrote shortly after the event. I don't care about the perks. I don't care about the deal. I won't be someone's doll with a spotlight on her. I just want to make it through this industry alive. The judge asked if she wished to pause. Jennifer declined. No. Because it doesn't matter who I am. In those places, fame doesn't shield you. You're either an asset, or you're expendable. The jury remained completely silent. The clerk entered a final note, the statement was submitted under protective seal. Ms. Lawrence has not spoken to the media and has refused all interviews. This is her only public testimony. The letter, the transcript, her voice quivering with restraint, they weren't merely evidence. They were a warning. The judge handed Jennifer a glass of water. She didn't drink it. The prosecutor resumed with a hardened tone, what happened after that? According to records, 5 years passed following the Sierra Pines Gala, 5 years of silence, of pretending it had never happened. Prosecutor, Ms. Lawrence, did anyone connected to Mr. Combs attempt to reach you after that night? Jennifer nodded slightly. Yes. In 2017. Different faces, same intent. After her sweeping success in the Hunger Games franchise and her Academy Award for Silver Linings Playbook, Jennifer began receiving curious offers, exclusive retreats, creative summits, branding collectives. One in particular stood out. A woman named Mary, described as a creative advisor, contacted her via encrypted message routed through Jennifer's former publicity representative. The invite read: "We're assembling a sanctuary for progressive women in media. Hosted by James. Solara Canyon. Off-grid. No coverage. Just calm." Jennifer turned it down. But Mary followed up. 1 week later, Jennifer's phone rang. The number was private. Against her better judgment, she answered. To this day, I'm not sure why. Maybe I wanted answers. Maybe I was still trying to make sense of what had happened. The caller identified herself as Mary. This was verified under oath. She said, "It's nothing like before. That estate is gone. The tunnels are sealed. This is about starting over." A ripple of shock moved through the room. "Judge, maintain order." The prosecutor asked, "Tunnels? Had you ever mentioned tunnels publicly?" Jennifer shook her head. No one knew. No one knew about the corridor. Or the padded room beyond it. I never told anyone. Not even my family. So how did she know? She described Mary's voice as unnervingly composed, like someone delivering memorized lines. She told me, "You're not expected to do anything you're uncomfortable with. Just come. Walk through the space. That's all he asks." I hung up. Jennifer informed her attorneys. They advised against further action. But the following day, while filming Mother, she discovered an envelope placed inside her trailer. No sender. No explanation. Inside the envelope was a document she instantly recognized, her unsigned non-disclosure agreement from 2012. Her name sat typed cleanly at the top, but what caught her attention was the word reminder scrawled across it in jagged red ink. "That moment unraveled me," she said. "It was their way of whispering, we haven't gone anywhere. This story is still ours." She kept the incident to herself, no calls, no emails. But she recorded it in her private journal. That page would later become Exhibit 17E. "If I go missing, send this." It wasn't random. It began in that crimson-lit room. It ends right here. The courtroom fell into an eerie stillness. Even the defense attorneys sat expressionless. Then, the prosecutor slowly leaned forward. "Prosecutor, Miss Lawrence, did the thought ever cross your mind to make all this public?" Jennifer, yes. In 2021. Not long after Cassie vanished from the media cycle. She had heard rumors of hush money, of hidden recordings, of locked storage vaults. I started tracing the connections. Not just what I went through, but what could have happened to others. Cassie. Patricia. And even someone from my own circle. The judge called for a brief recess. But no one moved. Because what Jennifer described wasn't just fear, it was architecture. A machine built to erase and contain. A system built on silence. And she was never meant to speak again. When court resumed, the direction of questioning shifted entirely. No more talk of parties, strange phone calls, or unsigned forms. The focus turned to the people, those who may have known, those who may have signaled something. Prosecutor, Ms. Lawrence, did anyone else in the public eye, even subtly, ever acknowledge your silence? She gave a slow nod. Once. At the 2019 Academy Awards. She described a quiet moment at a private post-ceremony dinner, when an older actress, someone she had never worked with and barely knew, approached her. She gently took my hand and said, "I saw your name once, buried on a list. Be careful who's still watching you." The judge asked her to name the actress. Jennifer refused. She was frightened too. The prosecutor let it be and introduced Exhibit 17G, a photo Jennifer had taken on her phone in April 2022. It showed an envelope left outside her front door. No return address. No letter inside. Just a small flash drive taped to the interior. Jennifer never accessed the contents. She gave it to her attorneys. Forensics confirmed the device was empty. But 2 weeks later, a tabloid photographer who had taken unauthorized pictures of her at a secluded event disappeared. Without a trace. I never publicized that event. It wasn't listed anywhere. No one should have known where I was, but somehow, they did. The photographer's phone pinged one final time from a wooded ridge near the Redcrest Valley. When authorities recovered it, the screen was fractured, and the battery had been removed. The case remains unsolved. Jennifer's composure finally faltered. I didn't want to draw conclusions. I didn't want to see what it meant. But what if that flash drive wasn't for me to use, but to measure my reaction? And someone else paid the cost of my silence? The judge gently reminded the room that conjecture would not be included in the formal record, but allowed her statement to remain on emotional grounds. Then the prosecution revealed another piece of evidence, Exhibit 17H, a leaked strategic briefing pulled from a defunct media management firm once contracted by Combs Global. Recovered during a federal cyber investigation earlier that year, the memo outlined damage control playbooks for potential scandals involving rising stars. Jennifer's name appeared in one redacted section. It claimed I was unlikely to take action, citing brand preservation tendencies. As if I was a statistic. As if they knew I wouldn't risk speaking up, because I cared too much about protecting my reputation. She paused to steady her voice. And for a while, they were right. I kept my head down. I smiled for cameras. I kept working. But I haven't had a full night's sleep in over 10 years. Then, she dropped the final revelation of that session. Jennifer confirmed she had been offered settlement money, though it never arrived under that name. It was hidden. Transfers disguised as consulting work. Vague bonuses. Fine print tucked inside partnership deals. Every time, I told my team, walk away. Prosecutor, do you believe you were the only one? Jennifer, no. I believe there were others. Some made it back. Some didn't. The judge halted further commentary. But nothing more was needed. Because by then, Jennifer had made it painfully clear. She hadn't merely escaped a trap. She had made it out of a machine, one that was still running. And for the first time, someone had hit record. The prosecutor's next question came with the precision of a blade. Prosecutor, Ms. Lawrence, do you recognize the residence located at 77 Ocean Quay in Coral Sound? Jennifer hesitated, then answered, yes. I visited once. For a short time. She explained that during the 2014 international promotion for the Hunger Games, Mockingjay, she was invited to a discreet after-party hosted by a streaming executive. The venue was a private estate on Coral Sound Island, a heavily guarded offshore property. She arrived just after 11 p.m. The atmosphere was subdued. Red lighting bathed the walls. Waiters passed out wine and unidentified drinks in glass tumblers. Phones were placed in magnetic pouches and sealed upon entry. They told me it was just a quiet industry gathering. Media people. Executives. No cameras. But it felt scripted. Not organic. The space she entered had sleek leather furniture, a polished bar of black stone, and mirrored panels stretching along the back wall, mirrors she later suspected were one-way. She didn't linger. A woman I didn't recognize leaned in close. She whispered, "You're not supposed to be here, honey." And that was enough. Jennifer left within the hour. But several days later, while promoting X-Men, Apocalypse, she found something strange among her things, a note, handwritten, tucked into the lining of a leather jacket gifted to her by the production wardrobe team. She never spoke of it to anyone. But she held on to the note. Its message was brief, unsettling. There were 3 cameras in that room. One hidden behind the mirror. Don't inform your team. The court was presented with Exhibit 18A, a scanned image of the note in Jennifer's own handwriting, dated and timestamped by her assistant. Then the prosecutor shifted direction. Prosecutor, Ms. Lawrence, did you ever come across any footage, any form of recording, from that night? Jennifer's voice lowered. Not from that night directly. But there was a video clip. The air in the room went still. It came from the laptop of a representative who had briefly worked across both Diddy's lifestyle brand and a streaming startup. She told me the file had no name, just stored in a folder labeled event. It lasted maybe 12 seconds. No faces, no voices. But I knew the setting. The mirrored wall. The solitary chair. It was the same room. She reported it to her legal counsel. The laptop was wiped clean days later. The rep vanished from the project, offering no explanation. The defense raised an objection, speculative. Unsubstantiated. Judge, sustained. Still, the judge noted for the record that the witness became visibly emotional. I don't know who was in that footage. I have no idea what was captured. But someone knew I had seen it. Because 2 weeks later, my trailer was broken into. Nothing was stolen. Just rearranged. She paused, visibly shaken. That's when I knew this wasn't isolated. This wasn't just a bad night in 2012. It was a web, with surveillance, documentation, and people ensuring no one talked. The prosecutor gently shut her folder. Prosecutor, just one last question before we break. What finally pushed you to come forward? Jennifer didn't hesitate. When I read the indictment and saw the word trafficking, something in me froze. Because I realized, it wasn't just Cassie. It could have easily been me. The judge announced a recess. And for the first time, the jury looked genuinely shaken. Because the woman on the stand wasn't just a public figure anymore. She was a witness whose silence had just shattered. Jennifer returned after the break. But something about her presence had changed. Her voice was clearer, more resolute, like years of being quiet had finally reached their end. The questioning resumed. Prosecutor, Ms. Lawrence, we'd now like to address the contracts, particularly the language you believe was meant to silence you. Jennifer responded with calm certainty. In 2013, I was approached with a multi-year branding deal through a proxy firm tied to Combs Enterprises. The campaign was framed as a fragrance launch. But hidden in the fine print, buried on page 37, was this line: client agrees to abstain from participation in, or disclosure of, any private development sessions involving past or present associates of Combs-affiliated entities. She paused to let the words register. I'd never seen anything like it. This wasn't a standard morals clause. It was designed to preempt a risk, the risk of me ever speaking out. She rejected the contract. But months later, another offer surfaced, this time for a leading role in a TV drama. Different studio. Different agent. Same concealed clause. It kept happening. The phrasing shifted, but the intent was always the same. Stay quiet, or lose everything. The court was then shown Exhibit 18C, a redacted comparison of several contracts signed by 3 female artists over a 5-year period. All included language nearly identical in tone and purpose. One clause stood out: client surrenders arbitration privileges regarding matters tied to emotional trauma, reputation liability, or disruption to legacy associated with mentorship dynamics. Jennifer read the sentence aloud, slowly. Disruption to legacy. That's what scares them most. And then, the moment that drew a hush across the courtroom. Prosecutor, are you aware of any other well-known women who were invited to participate and walked away? Jennifer closed her eyes for a breath, then opened them. Yes. 1. She's bigger than me. Major name. She said the woman had been scheduled to attend the same off-grid gathering Jennifer had once declined in 2020. 2 days before the retreat, she canceled her attendance. Jennifer didn't name her, but she did share the last message the woman had sent. If peace matters to you, don't go. There are mirrors there. The courtroom froze. Jennifer explained the phrase had become code, used quietly between those who had seen too much. Mirrors didn't just mean reflection. It meant surveillance. It meant you were being watched, maybe recorded. For the first time, she detailed a direct threat. In late 2022, she attended a charity gala in Brentwood. As she waited for her coat, she was approached by an older man, a lawyer she recalled from a branding summit years earlier. He leaned in and said, "Still walking around like you're untouchable?" I asked him what he meant. He just smiled and said, "You should have signed when you had the chance." She left the event that moment. The next morning, I told my team, "I'm done hiding. I'm not scared of them anymore." The courtroom was silent. Then Jennifer leaned slightly forward and said, "For years, they trained us to believe we needed their favor. That their spaces were sacred. That silence was the fee for relevance. But I'm still here. And I didn't pay that price." The judge called an early recess. As the jury stood, a woman in the second row wiped her cheek discreetly. Because Jennifer hadn't just outlived the machine. She was tearing it down, one testimony at a time. Jennifer returned the next morning in all black. No glam. Her hair pulled back. This wasn't about the spotlight. This was about truth. No cameras. Just the record. The prosecutor picked up where they left off. "Prosecutor, Ms. Lawrence, were there any public-facing gestures, awards, honors, partnerships, that now seem to you like veiled attempts to coerce or contain you?" Her answer came without pause. Yes. In March 2023, I received notice that I'd been selected to receive a Creative Empowerment Award. I'd never heard of the organization behind it. But when I looked into the sponsor, I saw it was funded by the Combs Cultural Foundation. She turned it down. But, as she made clear, that wasn't the end of it. Before Jennifer had even replied, a media draft was already circulating, congratulating her for receiving an award she hadn't accepted. Her name was quoted thanking Diddy for supporting emerging voices in creative spaces. A speech had been ghostwritten. Her approval was assumed. She had never spoken those words. Exhibit 18F was presented, an internal press release composed by a boutique communications firm, unearthed in her assistant's spam inbox. The award didn't exist. Neither did the quote. Jennifer released a short statement declining the honor. The story vanished online in less than 2 days. No reporter asked why I backed out. No one questioned the timing. It felt rehearsed, like I'd ruined a performance someone else had cast me in. But the real response didn't come through headlines. It came to her front door. 2 weeks later, a box appeared at the reception desk of her building. No postage. No return address. No delivery record. Inside, a pair of latex gloves, a capsule of glitter, and a Polaroid, the image completely blacked out. Only a handwritten caption beneath it remained. "Red lights suit you better." The courtroom reacted sharply. "Judge, maintain order." Jennifer confirmed she had reported the incident to local authorities. It was classified as an anonymous harassment case. No leads. No suspect. But she didn't need confirmation. It wasn't random. I recognized the objects. The gloves. The tone. That room. The message was clear. "Prosecutor, did you believe your safety was at risk?" Sometimes. But what I felt more often was disappearance, like every time I said no, I was being erased from the version of me they'd tried to create. Then she gave her final statement of the day. "There's a myth in this business, that if you stay polished, agreeable, and ambitious enough, you'll be immune. That's not protection. That's a performance. I played by every rule. And still, I became a target. She turned to the bench, not to plead, but to declare. Do you want to know why I'm not scared anymore? She held up a sheet of paper, worn at the edges, folded too many times. Because this came before any of it. Before the films, the press, the trophies. This is who I was before anyone cared about my name. And I've found her again. Court transcript note, witness stepped down. The gallery remained silent for 37 seconds. Because for once, it wasn't about secrets behind heavy doors. It was about someone who had found her way out, and chose not to forget. Jennifer returned the next morning, holding nothing but an aged envelope, no script, no documents. Just the truth, pressed into paper. The prosecutor approached with a more tempered tone. Prosecutor, Ms. Lawrence, did you have any contact with Ms. Ventura after her civil case became public? Yes. Once. Quietly. She described an unplanned encounter on a studio backlit. No security. No flashing lights. Just two women who understood each other without needing to explain. She hugged me and said, "Thank you for not asking me questions back then. I wouldn't have had the words." Jennifer confirmed that years earlier, she had seen Cassie, not on stage, not online, but in the same places Jennifer had been. Rooms filled with low light and expensive silence. Lists on clipboards. Eyes that looked past you. I didn't understand what I was witnessing at the time. But Cassie did. And she still smiled. That haunted me. Then Exhibit 18 I was introduced, a chain of legal correspondence showing Cassie's lawyers had requested verification of a letter from 2012. The same letter Jennifer had now brought with her. She explained its path. During a completely unrelated deposition, I handed the letter to my attorney. He read it in silence. Then asked, "Do you want this to matter?" I said yes. It was submitted under seal. Read personally by the judge. That was half a year ago. Now, it had been unsealed. Jennifer was asked to read its closing lines aloud. I am not your silence. I am not your property. If this letter has reached you, it means I chose myself over your control, and your story ends here. She folded the page with care and slid it back into the envelope. Then, in her own words. The first time I saw Cassie, she was walking through a door no one should have to enter. She's the reason I found the courage to walk back in, and speak. The room was still. Then came the final break in the day's testimony. Prosecutor, has anyone connected to your former management team tried to influence your testimony? Jennifer didn't blink. Yes. 3 weeks ago, I received a message through someone who used to work for me. It said, "We all have something to protect. Don't throw yours away over a piece of paper." The court confirmed its authenticity. It was entered as Exhibit 18J. Jennifer said she kept the letter under her pillow that night. They've written so many contracts to keep me quiet. I had to write something they couldn't delete. And now, the world had read it. The prosecutor stepped back. The judge looked toward her for one final question. Prosecutor, Ms. Lawrence, is there anything else you wish to say under oath? She didn't pause. Yes. I want to talk about what comes after. The courtroom leaned in. After the press junkets. After the curated smiles. After the applause fades and the world forgets to ask how you're really doing. She looked straight into the eyes of the jury. I've walked red carpets watched by millions. I've been dressed in gowns that cost more than families earn in a year. I've held awards, smiled through speeches. And none of it, not 1 second, erased what I saw in that house. Her voice trembled. Because that house never leaves you. The stillness. The cold air. The polished silence. And the mirrors. She added something that made the entire courtroom freeze. There are times I receive standing ovations, and wonder if someone clapping was behind the glass that night. Silence. I didn't come here for pity. Or for revenge. I came because there's a girl somewhere reading this transcript, wondering if anyone will believe her. I want her to know, I believe you. Even if you never say it aloud. She took a deep breath, reached into the envelope, and pulled out a single page. This was the last thing I wrote in my journal after that night. It says, I escaped the house. But the door came with me. The prosecutor gave a slow nod. The judge leaned slightly forward. And Jennifer, under oath for the final time, said, they never planned for me to speak. They expected me to vanish, quietly, beautifully. That's how the system survives. But not this time. Because I'm still here. And the door? It's open now. Court transcript note, witness dismissed. Jury visibly shaken. No closing remarks. Court adjourned at 4:52 p.m. And for the first time since the trial began, no one asked the cameras to return. Because the truth had already slipped past the velvet rope.